Hello and welcome to this episode of IFI In Conversation with a new series of virtual discussions about our favourite subject, the movies. My name is David O'Mahony. I'm Head of Cinema Programming at the Irish Film Institute. And I'm delighted that my guest today is Lenny Abrahamson, who, of course, you'll know as the director of Adam and Paul, Garage, What Richard Did, Frank, Room, for which he was Oscar nominated, The Little Stranger, and, of course, Normal People, co-directed with Hattie MacDonald, which I think is fair to say the nation has been gripped by and has made quarantine a little bit more bearable recently. Lenny, delighted to have you here.
Thanks very much, Dave. Lovely to be here.
It's been a strange few months, Lenny. How has lockdown been for you? Have you been catching up on old favourites, comfort food, or have you been dipping into murkier waters when it comes to your movie watching?
Well, I've actually been eating a lot of actual comfort food and therefore putting on a lot of weight. But
I think we can all attest to that.
Yeah, right. In terms of my watching, I've actually taken some time to watch more unusual films I've meant to watch in the past, less well-known films by great directors and things like that. So Movie, which is quite a good resource for just less conventional kind of selection of films. Ended up watching films I didn't know from directors like Clouseau, Celine Sciamma, people like that. And then a friend of ours, my wife's Polish friend of ours, a film critic from Poland, sent us a box set of lesser known Kieślowski films. We've been going through those. Actually, so good, real, proper food, you know, and like my actual food.
Are those the early Kieślowskis? Because I think some of those have been dusted off. Blind Chance, Camera Buff.
Yes, exactly.
I watched a bunch of those as well during lockdown. Yeah. So
interesting. So last night we watched No End, which is
I haven't seen that one yet. Yeah.
Very bleak, but really interesting film. And the box set comes with some notes and interviews with Kieślowski and stuff. So yeah, we've been doing that.
Very good. And Lenny, can you take us all the way back? Do you have earliest memories of going to the cinema? Is there a formative experience that you can share with us?
So I remember it would have been in the 70s, right? That I was, as a kid. So I was born in the mid 60s, 66. So come mid 70s, I was going to see, Herbie films in the Metropole and things like that, right? And all the, whatever the Disney releases were. And I loved the cinema as a child. Try to be in front of screens as much as I possibly could. And then I think the formative experience was being taken by a babysitter to see, and I must have been about 12 or 13 to see 2001, which is such an odd thing. I think it was probably a mistake, I mean, in other words, I think it was, she may have thought it was going to be a sort of
Star Wars,
Star Wars-y. But I of course didn't understand the film at all. But I was really, it just made such an intense impression, like the atmosphere of it and the oddness and the promise of meaning that I couldn't quite understand. And so that was a really formative experience in that I remember thinking, what world does that come from?
Yeah.
And then later, when Alex Cox was doing Movie Drome and BBC Two was showing the sort of European greats, so Fellini and Pasolini and Antonioni, all the Italians, and then Bergman and just really unusual for me experiences of art cinema, again, which were sort of going above my head in one respect, but landing in some way also very definitely with me. So they were the formative experiences for me as a younger person.
I think Alex Cox has educated a whole generation with his movie. You can still find them on YouTube. I sometimes dip in.
Amazing.
They're amazing. And during the years, what films have meant the most to you, or director or writer?
So it's an eclectic kind of mixture of things. I mean, I love Laurel and Hardy. I really do. And they were actually, that's the other formative thing, was watching, slapstick, but that kind of golden age of American black and white shorts and things like that, which I really loved. And think I found a kind of, I don't know, a deep sense of kind of empathy towards their characters in those films. And so they meant a lot. A film, Way Out West, one of the Laurel and Hardy films, which I particularly love, which is just magnificent. Then another film that meant a lot to me was Aki Kaurismäki's Leningrad Cowboys Go America.
Okay, yeah.
Which, I don't know when I saw that, but I absolutely fell in love with it. And it's informed...
1990 maybe? 91?
Probably about
like that?
90, yeah. Okay, what else? You know, British cinema from like the sort of Richard, who would it be? Some of those great realist pieces of British cinema from that period, from an earlier period, early Mike Leigh films. Okay, what else has meant a lot to me then? Right, so the heavyweight ones, and it Tarkovsky, you know, Mirror particularly, just had a big effect on me, and I go back to it and watch it every so often. And then something as kind of, in a sense, random as Ang Lee's The Ice Storm. I really loved that film, and it just has such a kind of a confidence about it, and I find it just, again, very significant film. Director wise, again, extremely all across the board. Bergman, I've constantly gone back to. Cassavetes at an earlier point, less so now, although Killing of a Chinese Bookie still stands out as one of my all-time favorites. Kubrick's Barry Lyndon is another film that has meant a lot to me, and his work there is kind of a touchstone for me. So yeah, there's so many, it's hard to even, on another day, I'd mention a whole different set of people.
For sure, yeah. And is there a particular figure that you feel hasn't perhaps gotten their due or isn't as well known that you champion, that you'd like to shine a light on?
It's probably, as in, am I right? My Own Folk and let me just check him. I'm going to check him that I'm the
childhood trilogy, is that?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Bill Douglas.
I absolutely. I think he's. I mean, he's well regarded by a lot of people, but he should be better known because I think he's a master. I found those films hugely affecting. Who else would I
always associate them with Terence Davies' early trilogy as well. They're similar. Similar-ish.
Similar-ish. There's sort of roughness in Bill Douglas that I like. And who else? Yeah, he's
very good, very good. And Lenny, do you have any particular IFI memories, to bring it back to the IFI? Any memorable Q&As perhaps, or anecdotes, or something that didn't go well?
Well, I'll tell you, my connection to the IFI goes back a long way. So when the building had been bought, I think, but still nothing had been done to it. It had been a part of the Quaker Meeting House, I think, where it was got. And Sinevo Flynn was there, and a few people who are still deeply connected to the IFI. And I remember the very first thing that I made on film, so I messed around with video in college with Ed Diamond. And I decided I wanted to record my grandfather, who, a Polish immigrant, came in the 30s from a shtetl, a small Jewish town in the mountains, you know, proper Fiddler on the Roof stuff. And he'd always tell these amazing stories of his life, and which had bored me as a child, as all grandparents' stories do. And then as I got older, I thought, God, this is actually pretty fascinating. Myself, Ed, Stephen Rennicks, and I co-directed. Stephen, who composes all the music for my films now and is a major collaborator for me. Some other great people got some stock from RTE, and we wanted to interview my grandfather, but we wanted to do it in a way where it was kind of like an interesting space. So we shot in what is now the center of the foyer in the IFI, but was then just the sort of open, with no cinema, nothing had been done to it. So that's my earliest memory of the IFI. And then really nice, I would think around the time of Garage, probably some lovely Q&As and, you know, so many, really, really lovely events. I did an introduction to Persona by Bergman there a few years ago, and that made me go back and watch that carefully again and think hard about it. And that was a lovely experience.
Yeah, I was going to mention that if you didn't, I was at that screening, and it's like it's a difficult film. I mean, I always, you know, reference Bergman, or Persona has been one of my favorite Bergmans, but going back and rewatching it, it's a knotty film and not a difficult film to present.
Very much of its period. I mean, it's only his brilliance that elevates it out of some of that kind of rather, I now find, gauche kind of aesthetic that it shares with much less
Yeah,
interesting films of that same period.
yeah.
But it's still Bergman. It's still absolutely fascinating.
And thanks to Mubi, actually, which you mentioned earlier on, I watched Autumn Sonata for the first time during lockdown as well, which is, you know, it's very typical, but it's an easier entry point.
Completely.
It's just actresses, yeah.
My entry point. I mean, I think The Silence is probably
Yeah.
of those two women intense relation. You know,
Yeah.
the double sort of female lead films that Bergman made. You know, that's one of my favorite Bergmans. But Autumn Sonata, yeah, I love also.
Yeah. It's extraordinary. Now, Lenny, I know you don't have very much time today, so I'm going to finish up with my traditional last question. Do you have a favorite Irish film?
I would say, God, I wish I'd known you were going to ask me that.
That's too easy.
Okay, I'm just going to throw a few. And I'm going to forget somebody that I absolutely love, and I'm going to be gutted after this.
You can follow up on Twitter. It's okay.
I really, really liked Michael Inside. I thought that was
it's great. Yeah,
really great. Like a proper piece of work, you know, fully realized, beautifully acted, and just really intelligent film. I particularly love Ivan Kavanagh's. Is it Our Beautiful Home?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a film I really
Bergman-esque, indeed.
Very, and hasn't had maybe as much attention as it might have. Let me think. I think I'll hold with those two at the moment. And I know I am forgetting, oh my God, so many great pieces of work, but I think those two deserve a look.
To be revisited on Twitter later.
I'll come back with more.
Lenny, thank you so much for your time today.
Not at all. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hope all's well with you in lockdown.
Best of luck. Take care.
Take care.